Jakob Schubert told me, he said, "I'd rather you drop me to the floor than short rope me." Instinctively, I dropped the speed starting module, grabbed the rope. He finished it. I got pulled over the PA system. I had burns in my hand. I may not know who's going to belay the Olympics. It's one of those things where just, if that's your goal, you may want to reevaluate your goals. Sobbing in the corner because they didn't make the cut to go to semis or finals, and have a parent hover over them and said, "Well, you should have climbed better."
Welcome to another episode of the That's Not Roll Climbing podcast. I'm your host, Jenny, and I'm excited to introduce my guest for today, Ty Hardaway. Ty has been around and he's done it all. He's been competition belaying, judging, and coaching for over 10 years, and he started the belay programs at USA Climbing and the IFSC. In this episode, we'll learn about all things belaying, get behind-the-scenes insight, and hear about how the scene has changed since the Olympics came into play, leading to some toxic parents. He has so much knowledge and just so many interesting little anecdotes. You'll understand why he's so beloved in the competition scene. I hope you enjoy this episode with Ty. Real quick, I'm excited to announce my new sponsor helping make this podcast episode possible, Rock Climbing. I got fitted with their brand new line of high-performance shoes, the D2.1s. They just came out December 6th, but you might notice a few of your favorite gum climbers are already wearing them, like Oscar Beaudrand from Team Canada, and also me. This is the first time I've gotten to wear their shoes for an extended period of time, and I'm actually super impressed with the grip of their in-house rubber, and of course, the famous drone heel that everyone says is the cheat code to heel hooking small edges. Feel free to message me if you have any questions about the shoes or sizing, and you can use the discount code NotRealClimber for 10% off your entire Mad Rock order. Info will be in the description. Back to the show. Are you getting ready for Youth Nationals in
Yes,
Portland?
I am. In fact, I'm leaving tomorrow morning very, very early, 6 o'clock Eastern
Oh no,
time.
I hate those.
It's okay. I'm not paying for it.
Sure, but I'm waking up, I guess at like 4.
Well, the worst is the flight they booked back for me so they don't have to pay for another night is red eye.
Yeah, from the West Coast to the East Coast
I'm
is...
too old for that crap. Well, I guess it's like flying to Europe, though.
Yeah, but you can't quite it's not quite long enough for like a solid sleep, so...
Exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of why I don't go back to the East Coast very often.
Oh,
actually.
I'm glad you empathize. Where are you right now? What city?
Just in San Diego.
San Diego. Oh, I have good friends in San Diego. Awesome.
It's a great place, yeah.
Well, I was born in Los Angeles and I grew up in Claremont. So San Diego is like a cousin to me.
Nice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I should go back every once in a while, but it's just, it's so far.
Yeah. San Diego is a good place for anybody. That's cool.
Oh, yeah. It's so nice. Is there anything you need to like specifically mentally prepare for with going to Youth Nationals?
Actually, yes. You know, my career has sustained in belaying is because I've also become quite a fitness person. I know it's a really embarrassing thing to say, but I work out several times a week, but I also do a lot of balance and focus and just stillness exercises, which I think really helps my belaying career. The second part of Youth Nationals, I will coach, so I get to be a lot more chill. The kids used to call me Coach Uncle Ty.
Okay.
Which is cut. I think, oh yeah, you can see it. There's a sign right there that says cut. It's the Coach Uncle Ty sign. So yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Wait, what kind of kids do you coach? Is it just like, are you part of a team or is it just
I am
like
part of a
coaching?
team. I'm the head speed coach for Sport Rock, and I have 11 athletes going to this.
Whoa, I had
this
no
championship. Idea. Yeah, it's a secret side hustle. I've been the head speed coach at Sport Rock for 4 years, and I've coached speed going back to when my daughter was a competition climber.
Wow. Yeah. So have you speed climbed much?
You know, some of the best coaches in sports don't actually participate actively in the sport. They are more theorists and students of said sport. I've tried it a couple times way back in the day, and every single one of my athletes would probably lap me several times at this point.
I guess I don't know that many coaches, but I would think you would have to be at like a certain level or like maybe previously?
Previously, one could say I was at a certain level. I mean, I've climbed for a very long time. And I think one of my historical uh, uh, touchstones is I started climbing in eighth grade. And for me, that
Whoa.
was 1978.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
this was in Mr. Lashi's field studies class, a class we actually had in eighth grade. And we would, you know, do ropes and knots and, talk about belaying and rappelling and stuff. Then we'd go up into the hills and do it.
I'm surprised that you had a class in eighth grade for that.
It was so rad. And then there were years and years where I didn't climb. And then when my kid was 5, she said, we were in Berkeley, and she said, I want to go to a skate park and a climbing gym. So my friend Rich took us to both of those places. And she walked into Ironworks and she looked around and she said, I'm going to do this.
And that's how it all started.
It is how it all started but she was too young to do it then at that point. So, a little while later, she did the birthday party and then rec club and then team. And then she came off team as an independent climber. And she had a good career.
Okay. So then when did you get into climbing after eighth grade?
Off and on, I went with friends to like what were rudimentary climbing gyms. Some were just like cinder block walls with some cinder blocks missing and some holds glued. And some were like there was early, earth treks here in this area that, my friend Al would take me to and other people would go to. But, I really learned lead first. And that's basically all I do because I don't want to have the safety and comfort and the mental safety net of top rope.
Okay.
I don't want to know the difference. I just want to know that if I'm high on a cliff and I fall, I'm going to fall. I don't want that to be an impediment. I'm kind of weird like that.
Well, so are you saying you never top rope?
Rarely top rope. I'd say, 9 out of 10 times more than 9 out of 10 times it's going to be lead. And I've bouldered a little bit, but, I'm old and things break and things hurt. I understand boulders. I've judged boulders to a very, very high level.
And so then how did you get into volunteering? I'm assuming that's after your daughter started
Yeah,
climbing?
I specifically remember standing around a gym for a local event, which is now called a qualifying event for youth, and she was maybe 11 or 12, or I forget what age, and it was a lot of parents talking about competition climbing and judging and belaying, and I decided, well, I think I'll help out so I can take my introverted self and go do something else. And so I started judging first, which is pretty funny. And I've judged to a very high level, as I mentioned, all the way through every U.S. championship and primary boulder for like World Cup, which is an honor, a privilege, and just absolutely stunning thing to be able to do. But then after a while, I knew how to belay. I was a pretty good belayer, but I was at another comp and, they took the volunteers to the back and my intention was to judge. And the person organizing it said, okay, belayers on this side, judges on this side. And this one guy kind of raised his hand. He goes, well, I know how to belay on paper. So my friend John took him and said, you're a judge. And he grabbed me and he said, you're a belayer.
Jeez. Okay.
So that was my first competition belaying experience. And now I've done a lot. I probably am the highest mileage competition belayer, if not in the country, perhaps close to on the planet. I know a couple people that have done it for years and years and years. But yeah, I've done belaying is what I do. I consider myself in this activity to be a belayer.
Sure, yeah. And I guess not even a judge either, even though you've done World Cup judging as well.
Yeah, I don't, I'm a level 3 US judge and I've judged every series, but I it's it's not what I identify as.
Okay. Do you have any like crazy judging stories from back in those days?
I've judged through last year. I don't think I've
Oh,
judged this
okay.
year, but I've judged, I was asked to be a finals judge at youth national championships last year and I did a North
Jeez, you
American
do it
Cup.
all.
Yeah, because they know what they're going to get. I'm pretty dedicated to it. But crazy stories, yeah, I was I was judging national team trials, and the person I was judging with, my secondary, uh, was a parent first, which is fine. You know, you can be a parent first, but I looked down and I saw that she was texting scores to grandma, and then she started actively rooting for her child, and it was very awkward because we're supposed to not be biased and such. But it was like, yeah, let's tighten up the standards a little bit because, you know, anyone witnessing this could think, well, there may be some sort of either focus lapse or bias lapse. Really sweet person, really wonderful person, but it's not the place to text grandma with the scores.
Yeah. Okay. How was this, like, recent or?
Yeah, it was a few years back. And I've had some really good mentors in judging. Like, I think the first people I really judged with USA climbing at a high level was like Tammy Pelicane and John Kelly. And those are the people that brought me on. And then I just advanced from there and I got my certification and all of that stuff. I even have like a certified judge's shirt, which I'm extremely proud of.
Well, I'm glad you are still proud of your judging background.
I am proud of it. I think I'm pretty good at it. It's just, it's as one chases one's passions, I think belaying is where it's at for me. And if I don't judge, it opens up room for other people to come in and get that experience too.
And you said that you think you were good at it. Like, what makes a good judge versus a bad judge? And similarly with belaying, what makes a good belayer and bad belayer?
The ability to absolutely to focus in a relaxed manner. You know, I've judged with people who I noticed they're watching the action on another route when we're supposed to be watching the climber. And there's other people, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory fashion, but they're fans. They're fans first, and then they're volunteers second. They're watching to see what the outcomes are. They're seeing how a particular climber is climbing at that point, whether they're directly in front of them or in a route around them, or, you know, texting grandma scores, which, you know, I don't want to sound too critical about that, but it just took away from the judging. But what makes a good judge is someone who can kind of detach from being outcome oriented, where everyone falls in the categories, to just being able to relax and focus on one thing. You know, I've seen judges go up to a problem and kind of climb their way through it. When my philosophy as a judge, as a head judge, is focus on the start, you know, the 4-point start, focus on control of the zone, focus on the top. We don't have to climb it. In fact, it's really exciting when someone absolutely breaks the beta and it's like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. But, you know, a lot of judges are eager. Someone will get to the top and they are clipboard up. Oh, they fell off. And
Oof.
notoriously, you know, I was a judge in 21 at this event, 21 World Cup, when Brooke won and Sean won too. But, you know, Yanya went up for a top and she kind of slid off and everyone was going absolutely nuts. But my clipboard stayed in my lap and people were mad that I didn't award the top. But upon appeal, it was not a top. She climbed it again. She got it. Sadly, when we do look at the outcomes, she did, you know, she probably didn't perform as well as she wanted to, but you have to absolutely steel yourself to focus on the start, using the zone and or controlling the zone and controlling the top. You can't prematurely award something that didn't happen because internationally appeals will come just flying in. They're like darts just coming at you. And I've sustained a lot of appeals and I've felt I've done a good job. I had one climber, you know, he pretty famous climber. He got to the start and, you know, I said, "Hey, can you come?" I didn't say it like that, but the in essence was, "Can you come down?" That wasn't a start. And he decided to argue it right there on the spot that, you know, I did start right. That was a start. You know, I'm going to sit here and appeal it. Well, his clock kept ticking. And then
Yeesh.
upon appeal, it was not a legal start. He could have just used that time to get the start. And the head IFSC judge, the JP, said, hey, you did a really good job. A lot of people would have just said, oh, okay, and let it go. Because the judges for IFSC events and for USA events are volunteers.
Yeah.
The head judging officials are people that deploy and travel and are assigned to these things. But some people are fairly new at it and some people are very experienced at it. So there's a lot of variation.
And then for belaying?
What makes a good belayer, again, is, there's a certain fitness level. There's a certain honesty you have to have with your body. If your neck is killing you and you haven't trained for looking up into the sky for hours, you have to be able to say, hey, can I go take a rest? Because once you're in pain, you're not going to belay as well.
Huh. Well, wait, how do you train your neck? Is this like
Oh,
F1 training or?
pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Specifically, what I do is there's an exercise I use with an elastic band. You basically put it behind your head, you pull tension, and you hold it for periods of time. And it's a calisthenic exercise that just trains the strength in your neck for holding your head looking straight up like an idiot.
Wow.
And we don't really use belay glasses. They're acceptable, but we don't use them in high-level competitions, championships, and elite events, mostly because, and especially in close proximity, like quali rounds, there's people right next to you. There's climbers right next to your climbers. Cognitively, the glasses will lock you into one place and your brain will say, oh, I'm focused on this. Whereas there's things happening left, right, on the ground, left and right, that you really need to be aware of. So you'll see a lot of belayers in these close proximity situations. You will see them move before someone falls to their right, who may fall directly in there because they're processing not only their climber, but the climbers on the routes adjacent and the belayers on the ground adjacent. It's headier than a lot of people know. And it's physically and mentally grueling at times, especially for long qualifying rounds.
Yeah, how long are like qualifier rounds usually?
Back in the day, we did like open nationals with like 4 belayers, and that was like 6 hours of nonstop belaying for four dudes. Now we try to deploy in the program working in pairs or working 3 people to 2 problems called the 3-2. And rounds are typically 2 to 4 hours, but we're working in pairs and in trios now. So you have an opportunity to give your body a little bit of rest, and while you're resting, you're watching the other belayer to make sure they're not pulling a knot or that their bag hasn't fallen, things like that. But it is a way to relax the body.
Interesting. Yeah, I had no idea. So yeah, you've been belaying for many years, seen a lot of volunteers belaying. What are some of like the most dangerous common belay practices you've seen at competitions?
The most dangerous belay practices at competitions is just a lack of focus. A lack of focus will lead you down the path of trouble. On one hand, during a climb, you don't want to short rope a person, but you also don't want to leave too much slack in for the first few clips. And I have had climbers, professional climbers. Jakob Schubert told me, he said, at World Championships, he said, listen, and I'd belayed him before, so he was being very funny. He said, listen, I'd rather you drop me to the floor than short rope me. So I looked at him and I said, well, I can do that. And he just howled with laughter. It was a moment. But you have to protect the bottom where someone can deck, but you also have to be very quick with giving slack on those. And then as they climb higher, you have to be able to give slack. I mean, we've seen recent World Cups where there have been technical incidents because of rope control, which is something you don't want to have. And I'm friendly with the JP for that event, and we had discussions about it, and he helped me shape some of the language for the IFSC belay program because it's the last thing an event, a worldwide broadcast event needs is for there to be a technical because of the belaying. It's embarrassing to the belayers, it's embarrassing to the event, and it's not fair to the athlete who, in this case, had to climb it again. That is a grueling proposition, both mentally and physically.
I guess like what comes to mind with dangerous belaying is that like incident that had happened. I guess it was probably a few
Ye
months ago now
Yeah,
with
I've
like the
seen, yeah,
fulling.
every the training exercise where the belayer was talking to another coach and the climber fell to the ground, that one?
Yeah. Is that what
Yeah,
happened?
yeah, that's sad and unfortunate. You see at the beginning of that video, if we're talking about the same one, a belayer belaying with the gree and, another person comes into the frame and they began talking, and then at some point you just see splat, and it really, really it's sad for everyone involved, and I did not immediately throw any blame to anyone, but I'm kind of a nerd, and so when I'm belaying someone at practice, it's pretty much the same belay I'm giving them in a competition. I if someone comes up and tries to talk to me, I'll say, "Not now." Uh, yeah, decking is the worst. Of course, it's the worst. Decking from height is the worst. I've seen it happen. I've been at comps where it's happened. It throws a real dark, heavy blanket over the entire affair. And it is, for the most part, if you deck someone in a competition, that's basically the end of your career. You become essentially unbookable because no one's going to want to have you with that rep. I've had people that have close calls and like softer decks that have been put into kind of a retraining regime to get back to that place. And it messes with the belayer too.
Well, yeah, I think in my last interview with Noah, he mentioned that soft decks are sometimes like inevitable.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. If a soft deck basically means someone has come to the floor, but very, very softly because it was controlled. If someone's pulling from the second to the third clip, well, we're giving rope, and if they miss that clip and fall, you have to be able to run that out, pull that out, have enough know the rope in your system to control that, and they may touch the ground. I had one at Youth Nationals 3 years ago, and the person came down and he said, "Whoa, thanks." And then I walked by the corral of setters, and they were all clapping, which was very kind. They saw what happened. They saw what it took for me not to. This was a hard one too because there was basically these huge volumes at face level, so I had to bring him under that. So it was kind of a soft deck, but it was controlled, and some parents or some spectators may not understand that a person coming to the floor was not only inevitable, but the right choice. But it's the uncontrolled, either slams into the wall or slams into the floor, that are real career breakers.
You've seen that at competitions?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
geez.
have. One of the worst things you can be as a belayer is cocky. I've had belayers who want to emulate their favorite TV belayer and do some things stylistically that are beyond their control. And I've seen athletes drop to the floor. There was one at an event a couple of years ago where the belayer was a little cocky, and the person fell and they couldn't control it. Well, they not only got third-degree burns on their hands, but the athlete was injured, and there's nothing anyone wants is anyone injured, athlete or belayer or volunteer, because it's sad. It's sad, especially when there are mechanisms in place and training in place to mitigate some of that hazard.
You mentioned you belayed at World Champs in 2023 and also the Copper World Cup, two super big events. Do you feel extra pressure or stress when you're belaying at these like World Cup level events?
There is you fly a big chunk around the world, you wake up and you go to the venue, and there's that little voice saying, "Can you still do this?"
Mm.
And then you get in the flow, you get your processes together, you resort to your training, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm really good at this."
Okay.
And other people
Yeah.
see it and they're like, "Wow, you're really good at this. We've never met you. I don't speak your language, but hey, nice belaying." There is pressure. There's pressure for any event. There's additional pressure for any broadcast event. There's additional pressure for any championship event. And IFSC World Cup and world championships are some of the biggest.
So I'm trying to get like a different perspective on the World Cups and the World Champs since you're kind of in the behind the scenes area a lot.
Yeah.
So as a belayer, are you allowed in ISO while they're warming up and stuff?
The belayer first interacts with the athletes in the call zone. So that's where they come out of ISO and they sit in chairs and they tie in and they continue their preparations. It's kind of a sacred place. And, the right belay team will not start talking to the athletes like fans. Hey, I've seen you and, can I get your autograph?
Yeah.
It's a place where the first thing I'm going to say to an athlete is, hi, I'm Ty. I'm your belayer. I've already looked over their system, but I will say, your harness looks great. Your knot looks great. I will show them my side of their system, show them that my carabiner's locked, and I'll give additional information like, when it's your time to climb, I will walk with you out to the field of play. I may even say, if it's warranted, I'm going to start on your left or right or whatever. But other than that, other than 15 seconds, I'm not talking to the athletes. Now, some athletes will engage a belayer. Most are just very focused and very quiet. They may talk among themselves. But there are times when an athlete will engage a belayer. Like one of my best memories is at Copper where, Jesse Pills looks over in semifinals and goes, hey, do you remember belaying me in Birmingham? I'm like, yes, I do. And she goes, cool. And that was it. That was our discussion.
Yeah. Good discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Any like things you've seen from, I guess, like the ISO area or in between like the call zone and getting out into the stage that stand out to you?
Yeah, very famous athletes showing up to the call zone without their harnesses. And it's like, you could tie in now, but you don't have a harness. Very light and fun. And they're like, oh gosh, and they run away and they come back. But it's also my job to help them chill out. I'm in no hurry. We're doing this early. Take your time, put your harness on. There was a elite championship finals in the US where, a big production thing, the producers would say, come on, they'd open a curtain, we'd walk out and the athlete would start climbing. Well, I came to do my buddy check with my athlete and I'm like, we're in no hurry, but you've tied your rope through the handle of the rope bag. So it's like, oh my gosh. It's like, no, it's okay. Take your time. We are in no hurry. The curtain opens, the production people are waving, and I'm like, 1 second. So we came out a little late, but I hope we brought the anxiety down a little bit. This was the same championship where I had been assured that all of the ropes had been flaked between rounds, and I got out with Jesse Grouper, and before he got on the wall, I pulled out a knot in the rope. My rope handler ran out, and he's like, a knot. I'm like, okay. And I don't know why I did this, but I remember, and you could see it on the video, I turned to the judges and I said, I did this. I made the timeout sign. There's no timeout sign in climate. I said, timeout. And I looked at the knot and I pulled it open and I put it over Jesse and he just walked through it and the knot was gone. And the best feeling was the athletes who were already in kiss and cry just started clapping like that was cool. And then he got up on the wall and he won the comp. But it's things like that that perhaps a belayer with less experience may get a little panicky over or may think about it as the climber is climbing. I always say you have to be a little sociopathic and put a firewall between your emotions and the skills that you bring to this.
Yeah, I could see you being like a calming presence. So I think it does suit you. Yeah.
I try to be, and a lot of the people that have gotten the highest in this activity it's like firefighters when they get to the scene. You don't see them like rushing around. And they walk, they do what they need to do, and they resort to their training. Not to say that we're anywhere near as important as a firefighter,
Sure.
but there's a slowing down of the mind and of the body to do this right. And part of that is to show the athlete that you're not freaking out.
Yeah.
And I've seen belayers freak out.
Do athletes ever give you like specific requests for how they want their belay to be handled? Please excuse this brief intermission, but if you're interested in deleted scenes from this episode where we hear about the hardest belays he's had to do, his thoughts on wearing helmets in competition, and more, do consider helping support this podcast on Patreon. Some other perks include a membership pin shipped to you after 2 months, prioritized guest questions, or the ability to submit video questions, and more to come. The proceeds go back into the podcast to help me break even, and they help me improve the experience of the guests. If you'd like to help out non-monetarily, liking, commenting, and sharing helps a great deal as well. Back to the show.
Yeah, they do. There are people that have either been dropped before or just do not like the experience of falling. They'll say, "Can you lower me really slowly?" Sure, of course. That's no problem. There's athletes where you get to the wall. One of the things we try to do is vet these climbs to know which is the most likely side an athlete will make that first clip. So we will put the rope on their hip with just a little bit of pressure so they know where the rope is. Some athletes will say, "Can you start on the other side?" Sure, no problem. But the first opportunity was to give them the same experience I gave everyone else. So they can call an audible and say, "Can you start on the other side?" It may look ridiculous as we do this do-si-do on the field of play, but if that's what they want, that's fine. At some youth qualifying events, an athlete will throw the rhythm off a little bit by throwing the rope over their shoulder or putting it between their legs. Over the shoulder is not common in competition climbing. They typically get to a point and they'll drop it to exactly where we wanted it to be in the first place. But between the legs is just dangerous. You don't want them falling on 1, 2, sometimes 3, because they will split themselves directly in half and will have to get... You don't want to fall on the rope with it between your legs. We call it flossing.
Oh, okay. I do not lead climb enough to know what the issue is.
Most comp athletes will keep it to one side or the other. You don't want to fall with that between their legs. You could end up with just a rope burn on your legs, or it could be more serious pain and or damage. And I've seen it happen, and it's not great.
Yeah. Are there any athletes who climb in a way that you find difficult to belay?
Yes. Some athletes, and the benefit of doing what I do at the levels that I do it is you're the closest to seeing some of the most beautiful climbing on the planet. Just gorgeous climbing, incredible feats of strength, body movement that is unbelievable. And some people look like they're going to fall every move. And as a belayer, you're trying to be cool, but you're like, oh, your body is reflexively like just jumping at, oh no, they didn't fall. And, there's a couple of climbers where we've discussed among ourselves that we have nicknames for that. It's just like, they look like they're going to fall on every move, and it's hilarious. And backstage, we just like laugh at each other, like, really had you working out there.
So what's worse, someone who looks like they're always going to fall, or someone where you have no idea when they're about to fall?
I think someone that looks like they're going to fall on every move, because you start using resources both mentally and physically to prepare for that. Unexpected falls are what we train for. Weird people that get themselves into a bit of a weird trap and weird beta, those are the hard ones to mitigate, because if you could mic me, or a thought balloon, it would be like, please make that clip, or don't fall here, because it's gonna wrap, you're gonna spin. There's a lot of calculations.
Yeah, if they have to like climb down a bit or go backwards.
There was a gnarly move. It was either qualies or semis at Burn, where it was like third to fourth clip. The male athletes had to get onto a volume, turn around, come back out, and then move up to clip. And it's like there are portions of that where if you just fell, if you just slipped, if it just happened, you're going head first backwards into the wall, unless I just throw slack at it, but then I'm bringing you down super low. And those are the constant calculations that we have to make, while also looking like, at times, like we're bored. I mean, don't mean we are bored, but we're trying to show that things are under control to not only the athletes, but to the viewing audience.
Are there any moves that route setters set that you like kind of see and you're just like, oh, this is going to make things difficult?
Yeah, like, a dyno mid climb, we're seeing more down climbing, up, over, down, and then back up. So you may remember an event a couple years ago. I forget where it was at, but the entire podium fell into the rope. It was Yanya, Brooke, and Jesse.
Yes, I remember that.
They
Yeah.
all kicked into the rope, and there's a lot of debate on whether that was an aid to them or not, for them not to fall off. But it's moves like that if you don't really take a look at it and talk to the setters who set it, it may catch you by surprise. So mid-route dynos, huge volumes at the bottom where people might fall into, and down climbing. I had this traverse move at championships in 2018 where it was like third to fourth clips that the climbers went up, traveled like 8 feet across a volume, then up and then back to the clip. So there's a huge amount of slack as they traverse to get to the next move, to get back to the next clip. And those are hairy. And you have to be prepared for someone falling on those.
So going back to that one where you said that like the 3 podium finishers had got their, I think it was like their leg caught in the rope.
Yeah, they all caught their leg on the same
Yeah.
move.
How would you have like handled that differently?
Not to criticize anyone, but it may have just been inevitable that move ended up in that. But I think it's important that when the officials look at the event video, which will show the entire route, what happened with the belayer, what happened with the athlete, that there's sufficient rope that no one can call it aid. In Wujiang, there was a very similar one where there was a down climb where there was controversy whether the climber was aided. It's just, if they look at the video, there has to be a bend in the rope from the ground to show that, nope, it was never aid, or same with short roping, that it was never short. I had a climber in 2019 Open Championships, very famous climber, was up about 10 clips in a very high climb, pulling at the rope, and looked down at me like, what's the deal? And there was no way for me to say, you're standing on the rope. But if you look at the video, if there were to be an appeal, there was a definite break in my rope. It was not straight. There was no way I could short rope that climber.
Okay. And then I think last thing about like IFSC comps that you've done, you also mentioned to me that you're an international speed starter.
I
have no idea what that is. Never heard of it
I'll
before.
just go with national speed starter, but I've done IFAC events. There's someone that says go. It's not, okay, the device makes the 3 tones and then they go. But there's a human that is both traffic cop, come onto the field of play, you're clipped in, I'm the person that says at some of these bigger events, at your marks. And then once everyone's ready, I press the button for the tones to begin. Ready, beep, beep, go. I've been belaying for 1,000,000 years, and I'm very comfortable with belaying. I'm a pretty good judge because I've worked at being a pretty good judge. There's nothing more harrowing than an IFSC broadcast speed finals, because you have to do it right.
Well, what could go wrong?
The worst thing that could go wrong is you can lapse after doing this for hours, and then as both climbers are at the wall testing their pads, you start the sequence, and neither are clipped in, which is why I've added the quiet words, A clipped, B clipped, as part of the routine to know that I've checked that they're clipped, and then I start the process. That could be a disaster, because I think the only way people have been seriously, seriously hurt with auto belay is when they were not clipped into the auto belay.
Yeah.
With the international speed timing equipment, if someone false starts and they cannot run that race and the other person is still running it for time in a qualies, if you don't lock out the other lane, it will give a false start tone. And then the climber's like, okay, now you're getting in my headspace because you didn't do it right. You just have to do it right every time. One of the hardest parts of it is when you say at your marks and they go to the wall is determining when to start ready. Some climbers will go to the wall and visibly show they're ready. And some will kind of fidget and move and fidget and move. And I had one guy who would always touch his hair first. You have to learn those things very quickly in qualies to know how to start them appropriately.
Huh. Okay.
It's harrowing.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, because some people have like their routines, I guess. Very common in speed climbing.
They have their routines at assembly, which is the little line where they're clipped in and they do their chalking and their stretching and their breathing. And they have their routines at the wall. And I think a lot of that experience, for the athletes that I coach, almost every practice is like a comp simulation so that they can go to any venue, any wall, and just do the same thing.
Well, so have you ever messed it up?
I have. I did make a mistake once.
Oh, what happened there?
Qualifying back in 2021 World Cup, a climber false started, and then so the next climber got to run for time. And it was, again, I'm referencing Jakob, when everyone who went to the Olympics had to do speed. I didn't lock out the other lane, the example I just gave you. And I said, ready. And it gave false start tones. And he looked at me like, and that he's right. I blew it. So that was my mistake.
Wait, so I guess I don't really understand what it means to lock it out.
On the start module, you have to take that speed pad where there's no human offline. Else it will give a false start tone.
I see.
So you have to run it as a one lane run as opposed to a race with two.
So it was Jakob who was doing the speed?
Yeah. He looked at me like, come on, Rook.
Yeah.
I've really been doing this for a long time. I'm so sorry. But you have to rebound.
So did he get to, I guess, go again?
Yeah. I just had to reset it. And then, he did not forfeit anything. But for me, I don't want to get in anyone's head.
Yeah.
Because of a mistake. There are times when the worst is when the equipment just malfunctions and you have to bring both athletes back to assembly and then resolve quickly what that problem was. I've had the wireless modules misfire. I've had the wired modules lose power. You have to be very quick to make a decision and quick to improv. I'm a speed starter, but I'm also a national speed judge, the person that inspects the wall, makes the adjustments to the holds, and really builds the whole program from the stager to the clippers to the starter. It's a lot of work. It's hard, and a lot of people have no idea what happens behind the scene at speed, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm now realizing I kind of have no idea what happens
That's okay.
behind the scenes.
Just enjoy the races.
Yeah. I mean,
if you don't have to think about it, it was well run.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you have to do as a judge?
Well, there's the initial wall inspection. There's getting the team to function appropriately. Again, the stagers, the people that are lining everyone up and finding athletes to line up. The clippers, how they clip and how they function, but also to make determinations. So if something happens, you have to make a quick ruling. If both athletes fall, you have to bring them back and say, we're going to rerun this race. The most heartbreaking one is someone that false starts in a knockout round or in a finals round. They false start in a finals round. Hey, that was it. Show's over.
Yeah, that sucks.
It sucks. Which is why I'm hoping a probationary false start makes its way back into the rules, because that's a really satisfying, really unsatisfying finals when the last race is someone false starts and that's it.
All right. So in terms of non-IFSC comps, you've been in the scene for a long time. Are there any comp experiences that have stood out to you? Outside of IFSC?
World Games in Birmingham in 2022 was a non-IFSC event, but it was run by the IFSC. Like the Olympics, it's It's managed by the IFSC. World Games in Birmingham was amazing because it was a multi-sport event where climbing was one of the events in this huge uh, multi-event, multi-venue uh, uh, sports extravaganza, and I think we were closest to like beach volleyball or something like that. But it was staffed by USA Climbing officials, but there was only 4 of us. So there's 4 of us from USA Climbing plus local volunteers managed by the IFSC. So for that event, myself and my colleagues got to do everything. There was 4 of us. For speed, we had John was the speed judge, uh, Steve and Carolyn were clippers, and I was the starter. For boulders, for boulder qualies, we were all the primary judges with the volunteer as secondary judges for boulder qualies and finals, in fact. And for lead, John and Carolyn were the judges, and Steve and I were the belayers. So it was great.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
the best thing, and it was outside in Birmingham, both during the day and at night. It was amazing, and big crowds, high stakes, lots of dignitaries there in the climbing world. It was amazing, and it was hard, and it was sweaty.
Yeah, it sounds chaotic.
It was very well run.
I guess fewer people to coordinate makes it a little bit easier.
Fewer people to coordinate, and just the people that ran it for the IFSC, the judges, and shout out to Hazel, the multi-sport event manager. It was wholly satisfying. Just a lot of work.
Yeah, no breaks means no time to stop and
No
worry about
breaks.
things.
2023 national team trials was like that. We had a small belay crew who were all also very good judges and all worth speed. And it was Olympic format. So there was basically 2 rounds for everything. And it was nonstop work. It was great.
Was that in Austin?
That was in Austin.
Oh, I think I was there for that. I was just volunteering in like ISO or something like that.
Also, we probably passed each other at some point.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely saw you. I like sort of knew who you were for some reason. I mean, I guess you're around, so you're very
Yeah.
noticeable. So it was yeah, I think you
Yeah,
stood out.
we're at a moment now where there's more visibility on belayers and belaying, even though we're trying to be as invisible as possible,
Well, why is there more eyes on the belayers nowadays?
because it has gone in the US and in some ways IFSC, it is very much more professionalized. It's not, the history of belaying for USA Climbing it was like the 4 dads in the parking lot that said, we'll take care of everything.
Yeah.
And, now there's a program behind it. There's endorsement levels and evaluations. And the one big lesson, and here's your hot take, the one big lesson is no longer can women only belay women or not belay, but they can belay any round, any athlete. And that's because once you learn the technique, there's not the myth of weight differential is completely gone. And my take is some of the best belayers in the world are women in some aspects because they have to be better in order to break through in some of these circles. They have to be better than a lot of the men, but a lot of women just get it. And, going back to 2019, Katie Kaiser was a real trailblazer for women belaying any round, any athlete. Met this young woman, Ro Del Rio, that, this was a youth regionals, and she did all the A men, all the junior men. And we just watched because her technique was so sound. She never got thrown into the air, all soft catches. And now we have people like Sealad and Megan, who are perhaps the best belayers on the planet. This woman coming up in this area, Sawyer, maybe the best belayer I've ever met.
Well, I didn't even know that that was an issue or that there was an idea that women could only
Well,
belay women.
well, little lady, you can't belay the men. They're too heavy.
Huh.
First, there are women that are absolute, just like, physical specimens that may weigh more than some of the men. Does not matter. It's not a weight thing. You'll still see some international competitions where only the women are belaying women and only the men are belaying men. Doesn't matter. In fact, we've been doing a lot of rounds where the women are deliberately put in the men's round and the men belay the women. Just say, hey, this isn't a mystery. We've disproven this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Eliza's one of the greatest belayers. She may be retired at this point, but she's absolute amazing.
So was it just like weight difference concern?
Well, that
like
was the line.
You would get thrown in the air, or
get thrown in the air, and you can't control it because we've disproven it. Weight difference it's the reason why some people use the ohm and descenders and things like that. But for competition where there's a high level of skill, I'm tall, but I'm not heavy. There are lots of men and women athletes that probably weigh more than me. It's not a weight thing. It's purely a technique thing. It's a skills thing. And if you have the skills, you pay the bills.
Okay. Yeah, good phrase. So, I guess if there is a big weight difference, what do you need to do? Or what do you need to take into consideration?
There's nothing you do differently. We use ATCs and we use what we call dynamic rope control, which it used to be called slip belay. Well, slip belay doesn't really sound like something that's very safe. So we came up with the words dynamic rope control, DRC. As someone is starting to fall, you start their descent. So they fall into a soft, even cloud of joy. If it's low, you may have to lock off and you may get jerked or pulled a little bit. But if you know how to handle it, you know how to handle it. Man or woman, it's a skills and experience deal. And before I forget, I've talked a lot about lead and speed, but paraclimbing is where it's at, man.
Right, yeah.
These are athletes, and a lot of people have not gotten to the point where they appreciate the strength, determination, and skill of these athletes. It can be super hard to belay. You have to be, these are people that your technique comes into play because some of these athletes may not be able to absorb the impact of a wall or, of course, a deck, whether it's because of their, missing a limb, low powered, or, if you don't have both of your legs, your center of balance is in a really different place for climbing. And so the belaying, we like to, belayer Steve likes to call paraclimbing, belaying like fly fishing. You're so attuned to the touch of the rope and what's happening on the wall. And with the dual belay system, the two belay system, it's super, super important to get both sides right. You're going to see more of the dual belay system as they put the younger climbers, the top rope climbers, on big overhang walls. And some of that is to prepare the younger climbers who are still top roping to climb these big overhang walls. But with the dual belay, it prevents, where it's very overhung, it prevents the climber from, if it were just top rope, from falling to the ground because of the slack involved. But it also prevents the swing out, swing back to the wall. There was a stigma with it, and some paraclimbers were like, we'd rather just have a single top rope. But I think we're going to see it more and more, especially with the younger top rope only climbers. And there are some instances where this has already happened. So it's super great.
Why do some paraclimbers want only single top rope?
They want the same experience as any climber is going to have, not to be, we have to have this helping hand with the dual belay. Well, it's more just to protect all the athletes, because a lot of these big overhung walls aren't intended for top rope only. In fact, a lot of gyms will not let you top rope only some of these overhang walls because a low fall could put you into the floor.
I didn't go into any paraclimbing questions because I had already learned a lot from my last episode with Noah, which I think people should check out if
You
they
should.
want to hear more about that.
I like to consider Noah as a prodigy of sorts, but he's also someone I have so much respect for as a caring human and as just a highly, highly skilled professional.
Yeah, I know that Noah mentioned about belaying, like the leg amputees. They climb so fast because they're
So
campusing
fast.
up the
Yeah.
wall and trying to get up there as fast as they can.
They've continued to make those routes harder. So it's not as fast as it once was when it was basically just straight up into the air. But it was like back when we manually belayed speed climbing,
Oh, geez.
Yeah. 8 seconds, 6 second speed climbing was extremely hard to do. You did
Wait,
it
how
with
long ago was that?
2018, I think, was the last elite
Whoa.
event where we had 2-person belay. And if you saw there's a real rock with speed belaying where at that event, it was John Browser going, 6 something seconds that one of the belayers missed a hand because you're belaying this side of the gree like this, where you have someone else is pulling the rope through the other side of the gree. So it's 4 hands on the rope.
Whoa.
But he missed a hand and fell over. So now I'm the starter standing there and I see this huge loop of rope. Well, if he gets to the top, he's going to crash because there's too much rope. So instinctively, I dropped the speed starting module, grabbed the rope. He finished it. I got pulled over the PA system. I had
Oh my
burns in my
gosh.
hand. And I know some people who have had shoulder injuries from grabbing a rope from a manual belay. So auto belays, that was the end of manual speed belaying.
Oh my gosh. I need to see a video of that. Wow. I had no idea that they ever did speed climbing with manual belays.
There was a time when auto belays were deemed to be too slow. But now that the times are a little over 4 seconds, there's no way to do it manually.
Was there ever a concern when doing it manually that you would be like aiding them by like going too fast?
Yeah.
Especially if they like slip and fall?
Yep. Yes. Aiding was a concern. And if someone slipped, then now you've caught them. So,
Yeah.
then the adjudication is, did they weight the rope? Was it a fall? Auto belay really, really simplifies speed climbing.
Yeah, geez. I mean, judges definitely had a big job for speed climbing back in the day then.
Yeah. Then they'd ask the belayer, hey, did they weight the rope? And it's like, I don't know. I was just trying to keep them off the floor.
Jeez. Okay. Interesting. But okay, we got to this from paraclimbing somehow. Are there any other like things with paraclimbing belaying that surprised you when you like, I guess, first started?
When I first started, my first big paraclimbing event was 2019 paraclimbing championship. And one of the things that shocked me was it was considered to be a not elite event, so you didn't have a lot of the best people come out to support paraclimbing, which sucked because it is an elite event. It is harder in some aspects to belay. So when we showed up for that, that was the first time they said, "Oh, you guys are here. This must be real," which was both flattering but also disappointing that it hadn't received the amount of support it has. And also, and one of the things that paraclimbers hate are people that are like, "Oh, they're so strong." And no, they're the same dirtbags that we belay out at the crag and
Yeah.
in the lead series. They don't want that. And a lot of paraclimbers don't want your help untying or unclipping. Just leave me alone and it's fine. That's cool. But yeah, I think we serve paraclimbing to the same standards and bring the same skilled personnel that we do for any event. And that was our goal.
And anything like specifically about belaying them that stood out? I guess you mentioned like their center of gravity could be different.
Center of gravity and just managing a dual belay system can be difficult. If you do it wrong, then now they're caught up in the rope and it's a whole different issue. They could fall and catch a prosthesis in the rope, which you don't want to happen. And one thing that I learned this year that I'd never really considered is that when I gave the example of the woman back in the day standing on the rope, well, she finally felt that she was standing on the rope. If you have a prosthetic leg, you don't feel that you're standing on the rope. You may not feel it as much. There may be less tactile feedback that you're standing on a rope, and it happens. Yeah, it's hard, and you have to be thoughtful, and experience counts. It can't just be some person off. I've had judges tell me, "Well, it's just top rope belaying." No, it's not just top rope belaying. It's super hard top rope belaying with a partner on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, it is not easy out there to to play paraclimbing and put on that event. Okay, so you have been in the competition scene for quite a while, climbing for quite a while. How has the scene changed now that climbing is an Olympic sport and like paraclimbing is a Paralympic sport?
Amazing that it's a Paralympic sport. I know there's some disappointment at the number of categories that got
Of
pushed
course,
through,
yeah.
but, you know, as with, the other disciplines of climbing, it can evolve. And so maybe more will be included in the future. But the biggest thing that you're starting to see is how hungry/thirsty people are to get part of that Olympic action. And I don't mean just the athletes. Of course, the athletes are trying their hardest to make it as far as they can, with a mix of very few people being wildly successful and a lot of people being wildly disappointed. But even behind the scenes with judging and belaying, I've had numerous people say, "So, how do I belay the Olympics?" And my standard response is, no one you know will belay the Olympics, because it's probably going to come down to 4 people that may be invited for the Olympics. I'll be 137 in 2028, so I'm probably not belaying the Olympics. I may not know who's going to belay the Olympics. It's one of those things where, just if that's your goal, you may want to reevaluate your goals. But if that's your goal, stay in the circuit, get as much work in as you can, and hopefully whoever's making that decision at the time, you may be among the people picking that. But my answer is, I don't know who's making that decision. I don't know who's going to do that. It could be anybody, probably not anybody we know. That's how few people that will do that. With any luck, I will be invited to do paraclimbing, which I think would be my passion. But again, it's not something I'm either working toward or hoping for. Whatever happens, happens. But it's made climbing to be very, very serious. And you see it trickling down from the elite athletes all the way down to the youth. Back in the day, in order to go to a regional championships, the qualification was you had to compete in 2 events, and that was your qualifier. Now you have to make a certain tier. So with that, the stakes have become higher, the competition has become harder, and there's a little bit more of a parent influence and involvement. And these are the parents that we've criticized in climbing from, like, other sports. And not to disparage other sports, but there are hockey parents. I was a soccer coach. The parents, I had to tell the parents before every competition, uh, before every match, please don't coach from the sidelines. They're trying to listen to me and Coach Rob. But the parents, there's some parents that feel they know better. And I know it's stressful for them. And I know in some sports, the parents feel there are scholarships involved. And in some sports, parents feel that they can ascend to the Olympics. Again, significantly 0 people we know will get this opportunity. It's that limited a pool. You can see it sometimes with some of the parents. I'm not criticizing every parent, but some parents get very intense. Some athletes, even young athletes, get very, very intense, to a point where there's a question of how healthy this is. D athletes, which are the U13 or U14, D athletes used to go to national championships, and it was a big outcry when they took D out of nationals and put it into the climbing festival, or whatever that's called now. But the thinking from the committee was, it's a lot of pressure to put on children, that you
Yeah.
have to go to a national championship and then, make it the next year and make it the next year. And so many young athletes who are very successful in their under 15, under 17, they grow, their body changes, their interests change. They may not find that same level of success. And it's hard on families. It's hard on the athletes. It's hard on the parents. Parents who are saying, we won, we did this. It's like, no, your kid did that. You can support your kid without it being part of you. And I'm not being harsh on all parents. It's the few that we've all seen that really make it a overly intense, overly precious, and overly stressful activity at times.
While your daughter was growing up, what was the youth scene like then?
It was back when you just had to, do two events to get into regionals. But she became super serious and pretty good. She was, I'm not going to say she was, the best, but she was pretty good. She received a bronze medal at Canadian Nationals in speed one year, and she specialized in speed for a while. But it's a hard discipline for those who specialize. You're putting a lot of eggs into a 10-second basket. And there's athletes that have traveled all the way around the world and false started, and that's it. Or, my daughter has missed the timer, and that's it, no time. And there were people who burned out. But it's, the same with the other disciplines too. It can be taxing. And I like to hope that more athletes are able to have fun and still let climbing be fun. But there are a lot of athletes who are just really good. And yes, in the elite series, for a lot of athletes, this is their job. This is their livelihood. This is what they do professionally. And that's great and love to see it. But it's hard to see young athletes crying because they didn't make the cut, sobbing in the corner because they didn't make the cut to go to semis or finals, and have a parent hover over them and said, well, you should have climbed better. So uncool, so unsupportive. My wife is a developmental psychologist, PhD. My background is social psychology. We talk about what these impacts could be, and some of them are just not healthy. My child, you had to be 16 at the time to go into the elite circuit, 16 during the competition year. So she was 15 when she left youth. And I asked her, and she said, it's the parents. They're driving, hopefully not me, because I continue to work with her, transport her, and support her. But she's like, just the stuff she's witnessed is just too hard to have to witness continually.
And is it like also cutthroat even with, I guess, like other families? Like
it can be
family beef.
Yeah, all of that has happened. But she found the elite circuit to be more chill because, there was a time when she was competing in the same comps as her coach, and they could just hang out and talk, and it was chill. And the collegiate scene, super chill, and the paraclimbing scene, super chill and loving and supportive. But sometimes the youth and elite boulder and youth elite and elite lead comps can be pretty intense. And I've worked the most intense comps. NTT is very intense. Elite and youth championships are very intense. And that's the nature of competition. But, putting the Olympics at the top of that pyramid has ratcheted up the intensity for everybody. And I know some pro climbers who didn't make it. It's altered their career trajectories. They've gone on to other things. A lot of them have gone on to just climb outdoors or do other things, which is fine. And that's one of the things I've grown to appreciate. The belaying community is some people will go on to other things. I'm done being a top belayer. I'm going to go do something else.
Good to get that kind of history and background, and to learn that youth is not where you ever want to find yourself.
Well, I'm sure someone in your vast audience will say he was too critical, but I'm not trying to be critical. It's just one of our jobs as a parent, as an adult, as an official, is to look after the athletes, whether that's belaying well, judging well, or, just providing water. Support is important and care is important. One of the things I love most about some of the top players is how much they care about athletes. Athletes who may show up to a chair late. It's like, let's calm this down. We got you. We'll get you out to the field of play. It's not time to freak out.
Yeah, good words to end on there. Just a few more Discord questions from the audience.
Oh,
So first one, do belayers get a rundown of the route from the setters, or are they figuring it out with the athletes? Especially when it comes to the crazier moves they set, like dynamic stuff and down climbing.
in better organized competitions, the head belayer will have a conversation with the head setter to know what some of their concerns might be, and then that information is transferred to the belayers. For some qualifying youth events, you just show up and you belay it. There are some belayers who are very, very good at what we call sight belaying. That's the person that can move around and work any route and be the person to take over for breaks, or just substitute in if someone is belaying under standard. And sometimes you have to figure it out. Most of the time, we will have some recon on the routes.
Okay, sounds good. Have you ever seen an athlete or coach object to a belayer?
Yep.
What happens there?
If a belayer, for whatever reason, has a reputation of someone they don't want to belay with, there's been discussions in call zones as like, can someone else belay me? In the youth circuit, it's probably more prevalent because you have more volunteers who people aren't familiar with. And so it's like, is that person okay? Or if parents or spectators see someone practicing poor technique, there may be a discussion to replace a belayer. We've tried to mitigate against that through training and endorsement systems.
Makes sense. And last one, is there a process for removing a belayer mid-comp if there are issues?
You have to have a really strong head belayer and assistant head belayer who, in conjunction with the JP or event organizer or head setter, determines that person isn't belaying to standard. And it has to be a conversation. Can you come with me, please? We're going to take you out of this rotation and put someone else in. I mean, we saw that at Wujiang at the very highest level, that the belayers were replaced. I was at a national championship a few years ago where I was head belayer, and I asked my head belayer to remove a belayer because he was performing under standards. That one of the things we have in every belay plan is, if you are removed, let's talk about it after the round and not on the field of play. Well, this belayer wanted to adjudicate it right there on the field of play, and it got very nasty. So there is a process at the higher level comps, most higher level comps, not every higher level comps, but there are many comps where there is no process. The person just has to be told to give up the rope. But it's something a JP or head setter or the head belayer are certainly empowered to do.
I didn't know that happened in Wujiang.
You will notice at the men's round after the down climb situation, there were new belayers put out onto the field. Hurts my heart to see.
Do you know what went wrong there?
I think the video showed that the climber was aided in the down climb. Without the aid, they would have fallen. So it was basically, or not basically, technically, it was a rope technical. So then the climber had to climb again. So that really, really threw the comp off somewhat.
Well, at least it wasn't like a safety issue.
It was not a safety issue, but there had been a safety issue earlier in that comp with maybe big falls, but I do not know that for sure.
Okay, good to know.
What I heard from people who were there.
Okay, well, that's all the questions I had. Thanks for joining. Any last minute words of wisdom you want to get out there?
2 words: ice climbing. That's where I want to go now. I've been watching that circuit, and it's everything you love, and it's everything you love about lead climbing. Plus, you have the cold, and you have ice falling, and you have the possibility of axes falling on you. And a lot of us really want to get into that circuit. And fortunately, I've been contacted by the IAA to have some discussions about belay standards in ice climbing. And I've been watching a lot of ice climbing lately, and aching to do it.
Interesting.
Aching to do it. It looks super fun, super fulfilling. In fact, Matt Groom was like, "You really have to get into the ice circuit, mate." And I'm like, "Really?" Then I looked at it and I'm like, "Sure."
So that's next for you.
That's next for me. I'll be in a helmet and a puffer, freezing, but loving it.
Oh, yeah. So I guess you need the helmet for if the ice pick falls on you. What about your body? That's still exposed.
You have to be pretty keen on where you're standing.
Has anyone actually like dropped their ice pick during an ice climbing?
Oh, happens all the
competition?
time.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, all the
Oh,
time.
that's terrifying.
The setters have to have techniques in place to either retrieve a pick left up or, they fall. Watch a couple championships. Those things come wailing down. Yeah. Terrifying, but simultaneously terrifying and thrilling. I know someone who does this ice belaying, and I know athletes who compete, and it's, yeah.
So have you done it yet? Ever?
Never.
Like any kind of ice
I've only
climbing?
belayed like people simulating ice climbing on like logs, but never a competition and never on with real ice. And I hate cold, so there you go.
Yeah, so then I'm not sure why you would do that.
It may be one of the highest tiers of belaying that could stand some unified processes and maybe not disparagingly, but professionalization. And I'd like to give it a go before I pretend to be any sort of expert at it. I'd like to try it.
Well, that'll be exciting, and I can't wait to see how that turns out. Let me know how it goes. I'd be really interested to hear about that.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, awesome. Well, good luck with that endeavor. Anything else you want to shout out or let people know where they can find you if they have further
I
questions?
love my team. I love the people I work with. They are some of the most caring people in the world, all the way across the world to the belayers and Copper and my homie Helmut at the Swiss Alpine Club. People that love to belay are amazing humans, and people that get good at it. I mean, like this woman Sawyer, she's been counting the number of climbs. She's already in one season a no notes belayer. Nothing to say to her. But I'm around. You'll see me at comps. Come say hi. People I've met have told me how scary I am and intense I am. No, I'm just a goof that happens to try to focus on my job. And I'm on, Instagram or whatever at _Ty Hardaway _ because there's another Ty Hardaway had it who only has like 3 posts, and I've asked him to I told him I'd buy it from him, but
Dang,
I'll go with the underscores. Well, I came into Instagram late because I discovered that some people that I really want to communicate with, that's the only place I can communicate with them.
Well, I will link that below so no one goes to the wrong one.
And if anyone has questions, happy to try to answer them. I know a lot. I'm not perfect. I may not have all the answers, but I know a lot of people.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. It was amazing to talk to you.
Amazing to talk to you.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Otherwise, you are a super fake climber. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, I'd appreciate if you rate it 5 stars, and you can continue the discussion on the free competition climbing Discord linked in the description. Thanks again for listening.